The story of this film takes place in Bishop Auckland, a town in the county of Durham, 11 miles southwest of Durham City. On the east, the North Sea is just over 18 miles away. From the sea, the land rises to the west, where the Pennines run from north to south. Here, on a strip of land between the waters of Weir and Gornless, is the town of Bishop Auckland.
Well, I wouldn't call any place dull, so long as there's something happening there.
But there isn't anything happening. Why, there's the market. And the castle. Lots of places haven't got a castle. But it's only the bishop's castle.
Do any of you others feel like George? That you can't find anything interesting in Bishop?
My father says there's a Roman road in the town, but I've never seen it. But that's Newgate Street, isn't it, Mr. Richards?
Supposed to be, yes. It used to run right up over Brusselton Hill. Just about where we are now, in fact. And then straight on to the north.
Was the town there then?
No, the town didn't even start to look like it does now for hundreds of years.
What were the Romans doing here? Well, when was the town built? Will you tell us about it, sir?
You ought to be able to tell me all about it. After all, you've always lived here. I haven't been here for a year yet.
But you know all sorts of things.
Maybe I do, but not all that many. I'm as ignorant about the town as you are. I think we ought to do something about it.
You mean read books about it, sir? We've got one at home by a man who lived here once, all about the castle and everything.
Read books, yes, but more than that. We should look at things for ourselves, talk to people, ask questions.
Could I go down a coal mine?
Why not?
But how'll we start? What do we have to find out first?
There are all sorts of ways we can start. Now, there are rather a lot of you, more than I could deal with separately. Suppose we try and work in groups, then each group can do a different study.
What's the study?
Well, Alan wants to go down a coal mine. All right, why doesn't the group that Alan's with find out as much as they can about the mines in the district? Then Ronald asked about the Roman road. It was you, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Well, there's more than just the Roman road. There's Binchester, where the fort used to be. Now, let's decide who's going to be in which group. Then I'll give you till next Thursday to think about what you want to do.
After we'd done that, we looked at Dad's book, the one I told you about, sir. And it got all about the castle in it, and how Tenter Street used to be a meadow and everything. And so we thought we'd like to find out how the town started, where they built the first houses and then the shops. And we thought there might be some old maps and things, if we knew where to find them. And Joe says her grandfather remembers before the gasworks moved.
That's fine. That'll keep you four busy, all right. Derek, add that to the list. John's group, growth of Bishop Auckland. Now, Jean, what are you people going to tackle? No ideas at all?
All right, then I'll say it. We want to know what they do at the town hall.
The town hall's where the council is.
They have dances there, too. My mother goes to them. You go there for dog licenses. No, you don't. You get a dog license at the post office. That's why you get a wireless license.
As a matter of fact, you get both a dog and a wireless license at the post office. John must have been getting a marriage license if he went to the town hall for it. Now, Betty and Jean, the town hall. Well, that's a bit vague because so much happens at the town hall. Let's see what you can start off with. Are all the routine jobs, surveyor's office, sanitary inspector, rates office, and all the rest. And that's how we started. That discussion on Brusselton Hill gave me the opportunity I'd been waiting for. Naturally, they weren't all keen at the beginning. In fact, one or two were frankly bored, but I hoped they'd soon get over that. Once each group had grasped the general idea, there were plenty of suggestions as to how they should go about it, and plenty of keenness. Naturally, everyone went home and told their families what they were doing. And other parents and Johns remembered books and clippings from newspapers and items of local interest they thought they'd forgotten about long ago. For several weeks, a sort of treasure hunt went on all over the town. We were looking round with a definite purpose in mind. We found pictures we'd forgotten existed and met people who knew of events we'd never heard of. John, Derek and the others learned how to find out the things they wanted to know. They began to discover what organizations existed in the town and to appreciate something of the functions and responsibilities of different members of our community. And of course, the more we found out, the more we wanted to know. I was kept busy finding out where to go for information and meeting the people who knew most about our district. My plans depended very much on what the children were doing. After all, I was learning too, and I had to acquire enough knowledge to keep pace with them. It was a busy time for me, but I enjoyed it as much as they did. There were letters to be written to thank people for help they'd given us and to arrange for visits. Sometimes I went along with them when they went to look at places. They didn't need me, but I wanted to see the places too. Sometimes I felt it was wiser to leave them to their own devices. I wanted them to find out things for themselves without too much interference from me. After all, there was always the opportunity of talking things over together at least once a week. Soon we found there was a need for a focal point when we got into discussions. We often felt we wanted to get outside the town and look at it. A map didn't quite meet our need, and we couldn't go dashing off to the top of Brustleton Hill every time. So I got a friend to knock me together a sand tray, and we made ourselves a rough model of the town. It was a great success. It covered a bit more than the urban district area, about 30 square miles. I helped them with the modeling to begin with, but once the basis was there, they took it over completely, and all sorts of models appeared. Of course, they were hopelessly out of proportion, but that didn't matter. All they were concerned with were the landmarks they knew and the new ones they were discovering. There was a very lifelike town hall, complete with clock, factories, the water tower, slag heaps, and even a railway bridge modelled in plasticine. Gradually, I began to notice their approach was changing. As the groups began to find out more about the town, vague ideas about coal mines, the town hall, and Roman roads crystallized into something much more concrete and apparently much more exciting. So far, they had been collecting oddments of knowledge haphazard, but now they started to put together what they knew, and where they found gaps, they set out to fill them. The more they did, the more interested they seemed to get, and all I had to do was to give an occasional word of advice when it was asked for. One thing led to another. A visit to Wilson's Forge sent them back to look at some half-remembered picture in a school book. And our map of Bishop Auckland was always being searched for some place or other. They began to realize that first-hand experience was not everything. As the town came alive to them, they wanted to know more of its history and that of the county. Books they'd never have looked at in the ordinary way were searched for information. One reference led to another, and they began to realize how books should really be used. One group had concentrated its study on a nearby farm, and land utilization survey maps and reports were eagerly consulted after every visit. We began to have quite a collection of statistics in the place, but still they weren't satisfied. So once or twice I took a party into Durham to the library. We are lucky being only 11 miles from Durham with the university library there, although as far as all the standard references are concerned, we can get them just as well at the public library in Bishop Auckland. At first they were a bit overawed. Once the librarian had explained where everything could be found, they didn't waste any time. Ronnie and Ruth were in search of pictures of Roman coins, like the ones from Winchester. Alan, of course, was interested in coal mines. and John and Molly wanted to see some maps they'd been told about, old ones dating back several hundred years. After a few months, we were really beginning to know quite an amount about things. It wasn't very long before the sand tray failed us. We were more used to maps now, and we wanted a model as accurate as our maps. We decided to make a relief model, cast in plaster and to the proper scale. Two of the groups decided they still had plenty of their own work to do, but the rest of us had reached a stage where we could leave our particular studies and help with the model. We worked on it for weeks, and it really was a grand job.
You know, sir, I think we ought to do something with this when it's finished.
How do you mean, Trevor? Do what with it?
People might like to have a look at it.
Mr. Davies was awfully interested when we told him about it. He wanted to know what else we'd done, too. I told him we were all doing different things.
Yes, and at the moment, each group's collected a vast amount of details, and you're all hoarding them on odd bits of paper. It's time we started making some kind of report on what we've done.
You mean write a book?
Or have an exhibition.
An exhibition would be lovely. What would we put in it?
Well, we shall have to consider what each group's done. From that, we shall get a story of the different aspects of Bishop Auckland. Then we shall have to tell it, with maps and pictures and charts. So each group sorted out the information they'd acquired, selected the essentials, and arranged them to illustrate the theme they had chosen. It's amazing how much can be shown pictorially when you really have something to say. And so for the next few weeks, we planned and prepared our exhibition. Can you put it a bit tighter?
That's all right.
That's fine.
Where do you want this putting, Alan?
Just put them down there for the moment, please.
This is the model you were telling us about.
Yes. This is a river and this is a gauntlet.
And that's Bishop Auckland?
That's right. Now come on, let's have a look at the map. Look, here's the map. And there's a bridge that goes across there. You know how there's a hill up from the bridge at Newton Cap Bank? Well, that's because the whole town's up on a hill. Not a very high hill, but much higher than the river. The weir goes halfway around the bottom of the hill on one side, and the gauntlet's on the other. They meet where the bridge is, the end of Jock's Row.
What's all this here?
That's the clay, boulder clay. It's all clay in Bishop Auckland, except down by the river.
Don't I know it? Breaking my back digging in the garden every weekend.
Didn't start doing the work until the end. That's why we've only got this.
And what's this? Oh, it's a photograph of the Bolden Book. It's a book that one of the bishops had made. A sort of catalogue of all the lands that belonged to him. And this is the translation of it. First of all, there were just a few houses, round Town Head and stretching as far as the marketplace. Then after that, buildings were started down Newgate Street and off to both sides. Then each time the town got bigger, it spread a bit further down Newgate Street to Cotton Hill, and then to Cabin Gate, and more streets were built out on each side.
That's what you've got here, isn't it?
Yes, that was the area in 1857, 1897, and 1910. And this is what's been built since 1919.
can't see the Roman road.
No, you can't see it, but it was where Newgate Street is, up there. And if you go over the marketplace and down where your chair, that's where it used to be. People think it went straight across where the meadow is, then up the hill and through the fort of Winchester. We went to Winchester one day. The Romans used to call it Vinovia or Vinovium. It doesn't matter which. Anyway, we went up and looked at it. It used to be a fort. The Romans built them in lots of places along their roads. Then we got a plan of Vinovia as well. It used to look like this. But some of it has fallen down into the river. They can only guess what those bits looked like. There's a hypercourse. It's what the Romans used for heating their rooms with. You can go down inside it and see all the pillars. It's got flue tiles in it. The farmer, who has the farm there now, showed us the places that have been dug up. But there's not very much left to see. There used to be stone altars there, and people dug up coins, but they've all been taken away now and put in museums. Yes, and we saw some pictures of them in books when we went to the library at Durham.
This was done by a group of 5. These charts were drawn up from the census reports. You see, each of the groups represents a different class of work. Then the location of industry maps. Where do those come from, Derek?
Well, the people on the Southwest Durham Development Board gave us a map with heavy industries marked. But it was made in 1934, so we tried to check on some of them.
That's right. And you went round and tried to find out what places were still working, didn't you?
Yes, but we could only do the ones near the town, roughly inside a 3-mile radius, because we could go around most of those. Then the Chamber of Trade gave us a list of light industries. Places like Linkford's Baking Powder Factory, the Co-op Bakery, and the factories on the trading estate. Then Kathleen and Peter went out in the evenings on their bicycles and found out about the farms.
It's a pretty complete picture you've got. Did you see any of the factories?
You mean inside? No, we've not had time yet.
John's group went to the forge.
Yes. Will you come and have a look? This is John Heavyside. His group went to Wilson's Forge and to Grange Hill Farm.
And this is what you found out about the forge, is it?
Yes, sir. Have you ever been round it?
No, never, though I pass there almost every day.
We went there 3 times because there was so much to see. Mr. Garman's way went round with us sometimes. He's the designer. The forge is really a proper steelworks, you know, and much larger than it looks from the outside. All sorts of things for the mines are made there, like tubs for the coal and different kinds of castings. There's a sawmill with a lot of mechanical saws. Whole trees are sawn up to make frames for the pit tubs and patterns for the foundry. There's a furnace, too. It's called a Bessemer converter. It heats the metal for casting in the foundry. We watched them pouring one afternoon. It was grand. And Mr. Garmansway said that he would like it if any of us, the boys that is, went to work there when we leave school.
Well, that's something for you to think about. And what about the farm? Grange Hill Farm.
Mr. Richards.
That's up at Canny Hill, isn't it?
Yes, it's Mr. Burkett's farm.
Hello, John.
And did you go up there, too?
Yes.
They came whenever they had the time and stayed as long as they liked.
Mr. Burkett let us go wherever we wanted to, down the fields and in the barns and the byres. The farm buildings are all together on the top of the hill. Mr. Burkett's and the cottages and barns. The byres are there too, and we used to go and watch the cows being milked.
The milking's done by machinery, and there's a central engine that drives a lot of other things too. That's in one of the big barns, and upstairs there are the granaries, where the grain is stored in sacks waiting to be sold, or used to feed the cattle on the farm. You see, it's what they call a mixed farm. It produces milk, which is sent to Bishop Auckland and to Coundon, and as well as that, they grow oats and wheat and barley and things like turnips and kale for the cattle. And did you know they grow them in different fields every year?
Hello, Beckett. Is John telling you how many acres to put into barley next year? Oh, exactly. But I think he knows as much about rotations now as my foreman. Good.
Have you seen the farm diary?
No, not yet. Let's have a look at it.
Well, Betty, discussing the rates with Mr. Davis? This is only a beginning, you know.
I understand.
What are you doing now, Betty?
The water supply. You see, when we found out what the water rate was, we wanted to know what it was spent on. We haven't got very far yet, but we found out where the water main is run.
Now, if there's anything more you'd like to ask me, just come along and see me any day.
Thank you.
Well, I'm greatly impressed by Miss Richards. The youngsters have done a remarkable piece of work.
I enjoy it. It's all I can do to keep up with them. This will probably interest you more than the others.
Yes, I was looking at it just now.
It began with Alan Vickers having a passion for coal mines. Starting from that, the group got interested in the effect the mines have had on life in Bishop Auckland. This is the story their information built up.
The story of a depressed area, in fact. One which many of us know only too well. I really enjoyed all this, and it looks as though other people have too. Now, what do you think your youngsters are going to get out of it? I should say you've given them something very valuable, what one might call a real objective view of the town in which they live. In fact, these children have seen most of the good and bad things in the town, its possibilities and its handicaps.
Yes, I knew that was a side of it that would appeal to you. But don't run away with the idea they understand all this thoroughly. We don't expect them to. But they've been getting a basis of first-hand information which will still be there when they can make use of it. And they're developing, too, a habit of wanting to know, of finding out for themselves. Instead of learning history, geography, science, and so on, all in watertight compartments, they've been finding out how everything fits together. And learning a lot of other things, too. Things that will influence their whole life and more.